So, guys, Dr. Monday Obani was on news with Dr. Abati and Ruben. And Rufai rather. Then things that he said there was touchy because he explained that our judges no longer carry out a clear judgment, that their judgments are always biased. And he also explained why Supreme Court orders are always mistaken as play. Just take a little for yourself, because right now I don't think our judiciary system is working anymore, and people have lost hope even in Nigeria government, at like all the whole Nigeria arms of government. People have lost hope in them because they've proven that they are not consistent or they are not competent enough to rule Nigeria anymore. Just take a little for yourself. I'll be with you guys in a minute.
Still, Dr. Monday Oyekachi Ubani, SAN. Dr. Ubani, can you hear us now from the Lagos studio? Good morning. Good to have you on the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Yeah. So the issue is about the disobedience of court rulings, not just Supreme Court rulings. Routinely in this country, we seem to be getting used to the fact that, court rulings, court judgments mean nothing. Why do you think that is so? Is it because, as some people argue, that the judiciary is compromised, or because the judiciary speaks a very vague language, as some people argue? So the judgments can be interpreted in any direction, or is it a problem with counsel? Contempt, either in the face of the court or away from the face of the court? You can help us dissect this.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ruben. Yesterday, when I put out the article, which I also sent to you, I got many reactions from members of the public, including lawyers and even from the judiciary, talking about judex, the judges. I can tell you that there are many reasons why we're having the problem we're having in the judicial sector, ranging from litigants that are very desperate, then the lawyers themselves, and also even from the judex, the issue of ambiguity in some of the judgments or pronouncements they make. People supposed to come to court for resolution of a dispute, and when they come out, at least that must be finality to that dispute, especially when it comes from the highest court in the land, Supreme Court. But we find out that parties go to court, immediately they leave the court premises, they start exchanging blows, meaning that they have not agreed or they are not in addendum with whatever the court has decided. Most time there is issue of misinterpretation of the judgment of the court. We have it, severally. There are so many cases that have been decided recently by the apex court, where parties, even right there in the premises of the court, are already holding press conferences, giving different interpretation to what the courts have decided. So I found it very, very disturbing, and it's trending, and a lot of people are calling and say, what is going on in your constituency? How is it that when people come to court for resolution, they come out even more complicated and then start fighting themselves after the court must have made a pronouncement? So something, really taught me that we need to sit down and examine what is going on, and then probably find a common solution to it. And that is why what I did yesterday by putting out, and we are getting reaction. And I think I'm here this morning also to make some of the prescriptions on what we should do, the way forward, so that we don't have this issue of people not having confidence on the judicial sector. People should go to court. It remains the last hope of the common man, and come out and say, look, we have this issue resolved and a final pronouncement has been made. But we are not having that, presently from the judicial sector. So something has to be done. That's why I'm here this morning.
Thank you. And we're grateful to have you here. You're absolutely spot on with that. Something has to be done. And I love that in your article that you wrote, you focused on enforceability, because what is the use of all of the pronouncement? I believe there's a quote that says that a law that cannot be enforced is just a suggestion. So where do we get enforceability? Because you get people who can understand these rulings in black and white. They read the CTC and all of that, but nobody can make them comply. So where do we begin?
Yeah, the judiciary has a big problem in terms of having those that should enforce the pronouncement of the court. The police, that's supposed to enforce judgment of the court, does not belong to the judicial sector. They are part of the executive. So part of the prescription is that, look, can we look at issue of having the judiciary to have a standing enforcement unit that can enforce its judgment? Because we have an issue with the Nigerian police that is part of the executive. Most times pronouncements are made, and you find out that the police becomes a stumbling block, you make a pronouncement even against the IGP or even against the police, you find out that it becomes impossible for you to enforce that judgment, or any of the security agencies. So the issue is, can we now probably begin to look at the possibility of having an enforcement unit within the judicial sector that can enforce their judgment? Then secondly, it is also very important that the judiciary must begin to activate the power of punishment, issue of contempt proceedings. Most times you find out that some of the judges are very afraid even to enforce their own judgment after they have made a pronouncement and there is flagrant disobedience to that particular judgment. The court's supposed to activate the power of punishment, contempt proceeding, in order to ensure that that judgment is actually obeyed and complied with. So these are issues. So enforcement unit within the judicial sector, then the judges must be very bold enough to enforce their judgment. When you have made a pronouncement and that pronouncement is not appealed against, for God's sake, if somebody disobeys that judgment, that pronouncement, then somebody must go in for it. Somebody must be punished. So the boldness of the judicial sector is also very important in enforcing their judgment. When you have made a pronouncement and that pronouncement has to be obeyed and somebody disobeys it, then there are consequences. And I think the courts must begin to really show that there are consequences for disobedience. Yes.
But why are we good to see you again, Dr. Ubani, and it's good to see you, my brother. But Michael, why are we having a case where the judges or the judiciary is no longer bold in enforcing its judgment? The same bench that we had the likes of Justice Chukudinfo, Puta, Saturn, the same bench that we had the likes of Justice Agolu, Siton, Kayode Shores of this world. Why is it that we are not having them not bold enough? And they see all of this, the politicians do. And why is it that most of these nebulous, let me use that word, vague decisions are mostly political cases? What is happening?
The issue of recruitment process within the judicial sector has been something people have been discussing over time. If you remember, the Oputas of this world, the Kayode Shores you mentioned, of course, they were the best. But over time, we were having a situation where the recruitment process has actually been watered down. We are not getting the best into the bench. And that's why you see most of the public interest cases you take to court. The judges deliberately will keep on postponing, adjourning those cases until you get tired or the matter becomes academic and you have to withdraw. It happened to me several times, when I bring in public interest cases. Every day you go for that particular matter, they tell you that the judge is not ready to hear, cases like this and all that. And then the matter is adjourned. You begin to wonder, is it that they are not bold enough to handle these cases, or what are they afraid of? So the issue of recruitment is something we have to also debate and get the best. There were times that those days we were getting lawyers who are practitioners, from the bar into the bench. But over time, we have had a situation where relations of very highly exposed individuals, politically exposed individuals, have been nominated into the bench, and it has actually, really, really taken a toll on the quality of judges that are at the bench. And that is the truth. We must begin to address these issues, in a bold manner in order to find a practical solution. So those at the bench, most of them are not bold enough. And of course, when you are not bold enough to be in the bench, it also affects even the judgment you deliver, the quality, and even enforcement. You will not be bold enough to enforce it against, especially when that judgment is against these people that are very, high and mighty in the society. So I think we must look at the recruitment process. And I also said in the issue of enforcement, sometimes you want to enforce this judgment, you want to make a pronouncement, but you know that the security agencies may not enforce your judgment after that pronouncement. You don't want to probably look silly in making a judgment that will not be enforced. So you become a bit reserved in committing any person for contempt, knowing fully whether that will not be enforced. So these are factors, but we must address these issues. Everyone, every stakeholder. The current AG of the Federation is doing a lot in terms of reform. Both in a way of bringing it to the Legislative Assembly, National Assembly for legislation. That also administrative thing must be done. But we must all agree that we have problems within the judicial sector, and we must find a solution to them. And part of the solution is issue of enforcement, is issue of recruitment. Who do we bring into the bench? Who are those we are bringing? Are they bold enough? Are they really, really tailored to be judges? Do they even want to be judges in the first place? Or are you forcing them to be judges when it is not their calling? There are those who are really called to be judges, but most of them are not in the bench. They apply because they don't have somebody that can speak on their behalf. They are not brought into the bench. But those whose parents are judges, whose parents are politicians, most of them find themselves into the bench. And we are where we are today as a result of the fact that we are not getting the best into the judicial sector. And that is the truth.
Dr. Ubani, without prejudice, for us to have clarity on this conversation, I'd like you to comment on specific cases. One, we mentioned the case in Rivers. Now, why do you think there's that ambiguity? Two, we mentioned the case with the Labour Party, right? And then there was another third case that we mentioned. And there's also the case in which you are a principal counsel, the case involving the Senate President and Senator Akpochi Uduaghan, without prejudice to whatever the court may have said about all of this. Why do you think that there's this ambiguity? Yeah, and then PDP, the crisis in PDP between, the Secretary General and, all the people claiming to be Anyanwu versus Okoye. Now, can you comment specifically on those issues? And then, I'll also be interested in this Senator Uduaghan and Senator Akpabio matter, all of that. If you could just, ground, the issues in practical terms, addressing specific cases.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Ruben. General, let me speak this. If you lose a case at the lower court and you appeal before the higher court, let's say Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court. Now, if you are the appellant and the appellate court makes a pronouncement and says that your appeal is dismissed or that your appeal is upheld, if it is dismissed, it means that you have lost. You have formulated grounds of appeal challenging the lower court's decision, and that is why you are before the appellate court. But the appellate court is now telling you that your grounds, whatever particulars, whatever you have said concerning the judgment of the lower court, that it is dismissed. It means that you have lost. But we are seeing a situation in most of those cases you have mentioned, where the appellant, who has appealed against the judgment of the lower court, and his matter is dismissed, coming out of the court, saying that he has won. So you begin to wonder, what is the issue? Is it that the language of the court was not very clear?
No, I want you to be specific. I want you to be specific. In law faculty, they say advice.
Okay,
respond to the specific issues.
Let's refer.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's refer to the labor matter. The labor matter that was just the latest, where the Supreme Court made a pronouncement. Somebody won a case. He won a case at the lower court. That judgment was affirmed by the Court of Appeal, right?
Because the kind of judgment that they are being carried out these days is injustice. Now the count is number one. Supreme Court gave an order. No other courts have the right to charge him in court, but federal high courts are still charging him in court. So they're no longer fearing Supreme Court judgment anymore. Like, even Abure went ahead to even hold a meeting after Supreme Court. I've told them that he is no longer the chairman, that he has been sacked. He went ahead to go and hold a meeting because Supreme Court is no longer valid in Nigeria. No other arms of government is taken serious in Nigeria because they've proven not to be serious. They prove to be incompetent. And once you are an incompetent leader, nobody will take you serious. If you are consistent, competent enough, and transparent enough, and you are clear, everybody will take you serious. P2B says the thing. Everybody takes him serious. Tinubu says the thing. People don't take him serious because of what? That's what I'm saying. So let me just get your video watch now about Dr. Monday Obani, what he said about our judiciary system and how corrupt they are. Because true is corrupt. Even the referee wrote a book how Alpha Babalola paid judges to declare judgment on his behalf. Like, let the judgment be in his favor, even though he's guilty, but because he paid judges now collect bribe to declare judgment. That means even if you have a case and your opponents have money to buy the case, you have lost, even if you're not guilty. That's how Nigeria operates now. But let me get your view in the comment section. I'll be guys in my next video. Don't forget to subscribe again. It's your boy.